Over on Raw, Sycho Sid and Bret Hart make their entrances as Jim Ross announces that The Undertaker will compete in the WrestleMania main event. Taker's going to headline the show and the Phenom is the #1 contender for the title, so it's likely that the winner of this match has a date with the dead man at the grandest stage of all. We're also going to hear from Dr. Andrews a little later in regards to Shawn Michaels' knee injury. The crowd are really pumped up here. Bret and Sid square off in the middle of the ring. JR and King hype up the importance of this match, but then Steve Austin hits the ring and he attacks Bret Hart. Once again, Sid finds himself in the middle of other people's problems, so Sid decides to go after Steve Austin. Stone Cold fires back with a chop block that brings the big man down, and Bret then goes after Stone Cold again while the referees try to get some order. Sid is hurt. Austin gets out of the ring, and when the referees try to check on Sid, he says this.
It doesn't seem as...
The challenger wants to still go, but the officials are stopping Bret from attacking his opponent. There's some confusion here as to whether the match is even going to take place. Bret wants to fight. He smiles as the crowd chants for Sid, but Jim Ross says we'll take a quick look at Thursday Raw Thursday while the WWF make a decision about what to do next. We see clips of Shawn losing his smile again. I could honestly recite this whole promo at this point, and that's a shameful thing to admit. And then we get a Final Four recap. When we come back, Kevin Kelly gets an interview with Sid backstage, so it looks like our match has been postponed. Sid is pissed off. He ironically says not even a broken leg could stop him from reaching his destiny, and neither would rain, sleet, snow, or Stone Cold Steve Austin. Kevin Kelly says that the match has been rescheduled for later in the show. It's kicker be kicking out there, Sid, and with that bad leg of yours, I don't see Bret Hart getting kicked around too much tonight. Over on Raw, Bret makes his way out to the arena for his title defense that was supposed to happen earlier on, but then, surprise motherfucker, Stone Cold Steve Austin attacks the Hitman once again. Sid gets involved and Vince McMahon tries to break up the fight, but it's not happening. We have a brawl in the gorilla position and it looks like our match isn't going to happen once again. Speaking of gorilla, Monsoon gets interviewed afterwards and he promises the fans at home that Hart vs Sid will take place tonight. Gorilla says this is the World Wrestling Federation, not a company who makes promises to their viewers that they don't intend on keeping. The fans were promised Bret vs Sid and the match will take place tonight on Raw. Whew, we made it. Bret vs Sid, third time lucky. We have a full 15 minutes left on Raw too, meaning we can actually sit back and watch the match without expecting a quick finish or a fast transition into something else, and it makes Raw's final offering of the week much more enjoyable. The two men make their way down to the ring once again, and here we go. Bret starts off as the aggressor, but it doesn't take long for Sid to turn it around and Bret takes a beating in the corner. The Hitman then gets whipped into the opposite turnbuckles and he sails the bump brilliantly. Bret crumbles to the mat as Jim Ross says the Hitman has to be sore after last night's pay-per-view. Big Sid begins targeting the back and Bret takes more punishment, but a Russian leg sweep brings Bret back into the match for a moment. Bret then makes the mistake of trying to go toe-to-toe with Sycho Sid and we get to see more of those big right hands from the challenger. The Hitman takes a complete beating afterwards and Hart really needs to rethink his battle plan here. Sid is destroying Bret when it comes to striking. Bret's then able to pull off a backbreaker, he then lands a headbutt to the lower abdominal area and then he drops a forearm from the middle rope. The Hitman then targets the lower back just like Sid did earlier. And what we end up getting here is both men trying to attack the same body part as the match progresses. Bret then remembers that Sid's leg was hurt earlier by Austin, and so Bret moves from the lower back to the left leg. Bret does everything he can to weaken Sid here. We even see the figure 4 around the ring post for the very first time. And when the action gets back in the ring, Bret continues to soften up Sid. It's only a matter of time now. Sid fights back and we see a clothesline and a leg drop, and then Sid goes up to the top rope for a diving leg drop. Thankfully he lands it okay, no snapped legs. Sid ends up tied up in the ropes and Bret runs at his opponent but he completely misses. Hart still manages to backdrop Sid out of the ring afterwards though, and then on the outside Steve Austin shows up. Sid takes care of Stone Cold and then Sid performs a sunset flip back into the ring. Granted, it didn't look amazing, but tons of credit for the big man for doing it. Bret counters with a sharpshooter, but Steve Austin manages to smack Bret with a steel chair. Sid then takes advantage and he hits the powerbomb, And history is made when Sycho Sid wins the match, the first time the WWF Championship changed hands on Monday Night Raw. Bret only held the belt for one night. He's now out of the WrestleMania main event, and Raw ends with a stare down between The Undertaker and Sycho Sid. This is our main event for WrestleMania 13.